the big question, what the heck is demand avoidance? I hear that a lot. You know what? I get in the thick of all these things and all my thoughts and my definitions, and often it's just to take it for granted, if you're used to talking about this stuff. So I guess I should make more of an effort in my episodes to maybe define things as I go along, so that if you're new to this topic, that you know what I'm talking about. So when I say PDA, I'm meaning pathological demand avoidance. When I say ADHD, I mean attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. I don't even know if I said that quite right, but autism being autism. So I will try to remember that in the future. But going back, so what is demand avoidance? I'm going to read some of this directly from the PDA Society webpage. It's www.pdasociety.org.uk. That is, the UK is currently, that's kind of the biggest thing. So I'll talk about that. Right now, PDA is not formally recognized within the United States. So let's say you wanted to find out if you were PDA. It would be very difficult to go out and get a diagnosis, because it is not in the diagnostic manuals currently. Neither one of the major diagnostic manuals recognizes PDA officially. But the loophole is that an autism diagnosis, when they make an autism diagnosis, they do allow for descriptions of the person's autism, how it presents. And so there are certain places within the United States that do offer, they'll give you your autism diagnosis if you fit the profile, and they recognize PDA as part of it. The plus side of that is, like I said, that if you're autistic PDA, it can change the way your typical autism presents. So autism is usually known for a need for like structure, conformity, or not conformity, but structure, predictability, and control. And PDA is kind of a wild hair, where it's like it enjoys novelty, it enjoys change, it also struggles with predictability, it struggles with structure. So you've got these two very conflicting experiences going on the inside, and that has meant that a lot of people get missed for their diagnoses, and they get diagnosed with something else like ODD, which is oppositional defiance disorder. A lot of kids get diagnosed with that when they are actually PDA. And then, or like borderline personality disorder. That's another common one, especially with women. They get diagnosed as and the initials for that are BPD. So if I say that, BPD is borderline personality disorder. It's known for volatility, trouble with maintaining relationships, addiction issues, etc. So for women, they get tagged with borderline personality disorder. Young men and boys get tagged with oppositional defiant disorder. So yeah, the point of all that is that, finding a diagnostician. I have a hard time with this word, diagnostician. I sound drunk. Who will recognize PDA traits is a very big deal. And actually, when I got involved with the community, I noticed there was a very big gaping hole in what was available for people in the United States. There was what I call the master list. There was this big list of PDA-friendly providers within the US and Canada. But I couldn't, at that time, I couldn't find who the owner was. So I ended up creating my own PDA USA group, and you can find that, if I can link that somewhere. Again, I'm just winging it here with the podcast thing, so I don't even know what's available. I don't even listen to podcasts. I've listened to 2 podcasts, maybe more, because my husband used to make me listen to them, and I would enjoy them when I started, but I just don't choose it voluntarily. So isn't it fun that I'm choosing to do one when I don't listen? Anyway, I'll try to link anything but that comes up, or find a way to provide the resources in a subsequent show if I don't have them when I'm talking about them. But on Facebook, I have a group. It's PDA Advocate and Educate USA. Specifically, that is my group, our group. And I have a master list on there that we have made changes to as we get information from community members of current practitioners who recognize PDA. And this can be anything from people who diagnose, or maybe clinicians who know how to work with it, because it is different in approach. It's going to be different than just typical autistic techniques. In fact, those can backfire horribly. So just a resource out there if you want to look into it. Again, moving to the PDA Society website. What is demand avoidance? So here at the top says demand avoidance involves not being able to do certain things at certain times, either for yourself or others, and also refers to the things we do in order to avoid demands. It is a natural human trait. Avoiding demands is something we all do, to different degrees and for different reasons. When demand avoidance is more significant, there can be many possible reasons for this. It could be situational, relate to physical or mental health, or relate to developmental or personality condition. It is sometimes difficult to distinguish underlying causes, but a PDA profile isn't necessarily always the best explanation for extreme demand avoidance. It's also important to remember that marked demand avoidance is the most significant, but not the only trait in a PDA profile. Okay, so basically saying, yes, we all suffer from different types of demand avoidance based on circumstances. It could be a symptom of another condition. So just because you personally experience demand avoidance, or someone you love does, that isn't an automatic, oh my gosh, they must be PDA. There is a little bit more to it than that. So for instance, on this website, it first covers autistic demand avoidance. So if you're just autistic but not PDA, there is still a demand avoidance facet of it, but that doesn't make it the same thing as PDA. So what is autistic demand avoidance? Autistic people may avoid demands or situations that trigger anxiety or sensory overload, disrupt routines, involve transitioning from one activity to another, and activities and events that they don't see the point of or have any interest in. So all those situations or circumstances are going to be very common for someone who's autistic, and they are not necessarily PDA. They may refuse, withdraw, shut down, or escape in order to avoid these things. Helpful approaches include addressing sensory issues, helping individuals adjust to new situations, for instance, by using visuals or social stories, keeping to a predictable routine, giving plenty of notice about any changes, or accepting that avoiding some things is perfectly acceptable. So what is PDA then? So I'm talking about all the things PDA is not. PDA is not this, PDA is not that, PDA is not this. What is PDA? With PDA, these same types of demands or situations may be avoided for the same reasons. However, pathological demand avoidance is all-encompassing and has some unique aspects. Point 1, many everyday demands are avoided simply because they are demands. So I'd say that is the biggest thing. It isn't how complicated it is. It isn't how boring it is. It isn't how... It's no other fixable or obvious reason except that it feels demanding. That is a bigger trait. That's, I would say, a huge aspect of what identifies something as a PDA avoidance. Some people explain that it's the expectation from someone else or yourself, which leads to a feeling of lack of control. Then anxiety increases and panic can set in. Point 2, in addition, there can be an irrational quality to the avoidance. For instance, a seemingly dramatic reaction to a tiny request, or the feeling of hunger inexplicably stopping someone from being able to eat. Many people have demand avoidant reactions to biological functions, such as eating. And it's not like, oh, I forgot to eat. It's that the knowledge that they're hungry makes them not eat. I don't have that one personally. I eat plenty, so I I love food. Um, or use the restroom. One biological function I can relate to is having avoidance about is pain. This came up recently in regards to a Sally Cat post. Sally Cat's PDA. You can find her on Facebook, and she also has a blog. She's very good at talking about internalized PDAers. So some PDA presentations are very obvious and external, and some of them are internalized. So all the stress and anxiety is stuffed down inside the person, and then when they feel safe or when they reach an overload point, then they have a meltdown. Maybe then they blow up, or they just crash. I'm kind of a crasher myself, but they just become exhausted and they burn out. So for me, pain can be one of those things where I start to I don't want it to be a thing. I guess I don't know how else to say it, but like, let's say I hurt myself, especially if someone else is around. I don't want to be noticed. I don't want to be talked to. I don't want to be comforted. I don't want anybody to treat it like anything actually happened. So I will just stop, not talk about it, freeze basically until the pain is alleviated, and then out. One memory of a time that I freaked out, and I usually even hide it if I don't like it. Like, I don't really want to show anybody that I don't like it. But one time, unless like my mom or my spouse and I were together, I was like, I would show him the irritation. But I remember I was at a Bible study and a friend hurt my feelings very publicly, and it was caught me off guard, and I started crying, which I very rarely do in public. I just don't. And I started crying, and everybody just, oh, they were trying to be so nice, okay? So they rushed over to me and they were comforting me, and I got mad. I got so mad, and I just was like, go away. And I'm not that way. Like, I'm like Miss Diplomat, Miss Friendly. Like, I don't show my anger and my agitation very obviously. So it was just awful for me though, because I felt like everybody was watching me and I felt trapped, and I hated the feeling, and it was not helpful at all in that moment for making me feel better. It just made me feel worse. Which was no fault of theirs. They didn't know that, but it's just that was my reaction. It was I got extremely angry. Point 3, back on the website. The avoidance can vary depending on an individual's capacity for demands at the time, their level of anxiety, their overall health, well-being, or the environment, people, places, and things. So what this is saying is that demand avoidance can also be hard to gauge from the outside, because it does. So I can do certain things. Obviously, I'm doing this right now. This has demand factors written all over it, me doing this podcast right now. The reason I'm able to do it, I have a certain reserve inside of me that is present, and I'm pushing myself to do it. I can only do so much of that. So each push expends so much energy. If I'm low on energy, I can do less pushing. Everything feels more demanding. I'm doing less activity, etc. So it's definitely one of those like scales. Just kind of depends on how much we have to give to the demands. Sometimes a thing doesn't feel like a demand at all. So one day it won't feel like a demand. Like, sometimes I love doing the dishes. I just love it. I don't know why. I usually love doing it in the dark. But I'll like go in the kitchen and I'll start working on dishes, and it makes me feel good. It makes me happy. And then the next day or 2 days later, I'm avoiding the dishes. I don't like them anymore. And nothing has changed. Nothing has changed about the task itself except my relationship to the task. Some tasks I hate no matter what. I have a hard time with laundry because there's so many steps involved. I have a harder time doing things, of course, if my health is poor, or if I'm not eating right, or if I'm not sleeping well. All those things affect my ability to handle a demand. Like it says, anxiety is also a factor, and also the environment. So, like, how are the people or the things going on around me impacting me? Is someone's presence, like having kids, that is a huge, I had no idea that having kids would affect me as much as it did. And I've come to realize the reason for that is that kids are unpredictable. I mean, kids are demanding, they need things, that's part of their development, that's completely natural and normal. But for me, that is very hard. It's hard that there are repeated demands in parenting. And so I really have to give parenting basically all the planning that's in me is planned for them. I plan to do nothing for them because that way I'm there for them. And so I'm not able to hold any kind of other structured job or employment at this time. I do take care of my dad. I get paid by the state to help take care of my dad. But to me, I mean, he's family. So I can't say that I wouldn't be able to, I can say that I wouldn't be able to do that for someone who was like a stranger, because I just couldn't handle it. And here's this last bit, and then I'll end us there. It says a PDA profile is also a spectrum and presents differently in different people. Some individuals may have a more externalized or active presentation, where demand avoidance may be overt, physical, aggressive, or controlling. So that means, let's say someone's demand avoidance is triggered, they can't do that thing, they blow up. It's very clear something's wrong. Your child's in school, they're blowing up a lot, the teacher's talking to you, that's when you get oppositional defiance disorder. That one's clear, but so oftentimes misunderstood. And others have more internalized or passive presentations, where demands may be resisted more quietly. Anxiety is internalized and difficulties are masked. And that one is also misunderstood. So there's a lot of parents out there that are saying, I'm not getting help for my child because they're masking at school. They're doing well at school, mostly. So like the kids doing well when they're being watched, they're doing well. They're doing their schoolwork. They go home, they melt down. Or they retreat and they can't engage with the family. They have nothing left for their relationships and their home life. And then they're missing a lot of school, which usually gets blamed on the parents because the kid must be fine because the kid's doing well. So it's just really tricky both ways. I mean, there's no like, oh, joy, my child's an externalized PDA, or no, because I get blamed for that too. Oh, joy, my kid's an internalized. Oh no, they come home and they're miserable and I have no one who understands. So it's a very lonely experience being a parent of someone PDA, and it's a very lonely experience being an adult who's PDA. And I'll kind of, maybe next podcast, I'll kind of talk more about that is, what does it feel like day to day? What does it look like? I have a lot of things to talk about, so I do hope I have somewhat of an audience.